Okay, so I'm talking with Jason Stuart, who was a fabulously talented host on Radio Titans with his or his podcast. When I say podcast, Name Dropping with Jason Stuart. He is a veteran actor and comedian who is very prominently on the SAG-AFTRA LGBTQ Advisory Committee, and we were always proud to have him. And so we're going to talk to him about his show and a few other questions. So tell me about
Well, just
dropping.
To be clear, I'm the national co-chair of the Screen Actors Guild LGBTQ committee. That's what I am.
Okay.
I created it around 16 years ago.
Good for you. Okay, I didn't realize that. So thank you for clarifying.
Yeah.
So how did you like with the name dropping, how did you hear about Radio Titans? Did I reach out to you because I knew you from the Laugh Factory, or I forget?
Yes, you guys reached out to me. Someone had seen my show that I was doing on Logo, and it was either you or Jake. I think it was you, honestly.
Probably.
And you had reached out to me to do an interview for something, and we had talked about it. And then you told me Helen Hong was doing a show there, and Helen was a friend of mine. And I called Helen and said, "What's it like working with these guys?" And she said, "You guys were completely out of your mind, but it's fun, so you should go do it."
Okay, so then Name Dropping was you would invite your celebrity friends from your various.
Let me tell you what Name Dropping was. The idea about Name Dropping with Jason Stuart, for me, was the idea of bringing on somebody that was famous, who you know a little bit about, but you want to know more. Get to tell Hollywood stories, who you acted with, how you got a part, how you got a job, a gig, singers, comedians, actors, occasionally journalists that were famous, people, anybody that had written something that was really interesting, something that was famous in some way. And the idea of the show was to tell people about them so they'd be able to have a more in-depth interview, sort of Actors Studio meets Comedy Central.
Okay. And so who are some of the people that you had on the show that you think, you know?
Oh my God, I had Frances Fisher from Titanic, if I remember. I had Michelle Lee was on, remember?
Yeah, Knots Landing, yeah.
And I think she actually sang on the show.
Okay.
And, oh God, Sally Kirkland, Oscar nominee, had come in and told these great stories about Shelley Winters. And with so many people on. I had Helen Hong on. She was one of my first guests. And Helen had just done the Coen Brothers movie.
Oh, which one was she in?
Inside Llewyn Davis, I think. Llewyn, I forgot the name of it.
Yeah, that's it, yeah. Okay, yeah. So the one episode that we at Radio Titans love to reference more than most was you had an interview with Lance Bass in which something crazy went on in the hallway and you had to deal with it.
Well, I remember when I was doing the show, and I remember I had something that was happening. I don't remember what it was, but something was happening, and I was promoting something. I don't remember what year it was, and I had gone on Lance Bass's radio show called Dirty Pop, and we just hit it off. We just hit it off really great. And he said, you know, what else are you doing other than this project that I was promoting? And I said, well, I have this new, podcast / radio show on a thing called Radio Titans called Name Dropping with Jason Stuart. He said, well, I would love to be on it. And his boyfriend and his people went, oh God, you know, why did you say that? Now he's going to call us. So I called Lance. He'd given me his number, and I called, and he had me call his assistant, and I set up a time, and then they came. And I remember, you know, where we were, the office was on Hollywood Boulevard, and it was in this crazy building that had a meth lab and a rehabilitation center. And there was always something going on in that hallway that you did not want to be a part of. And just getting into the building was a whole process in itself. I was always so afraid that people were not going to be able to get in for their interview. I remember we had Michael Learned from the Waltons on, and she was standing outside for 20 minutes. I was so mad, you know, this older woman, I'll never forget. It was just absolutely crazy. So Lance came, he got in okay. You know, he got a place to park, which was, there was no place to park. And that was also another issue every day. And because I actually had to pay to park for my own show without getting any money for the show, but I actually had to pay. So every time I did the show, it cost me $10. So Lance comes in with his boyfriend, and they're in the hallway. We start to talk, and we start to talk, of course, about NSYNC and about coming out and that whole process and why it took him so long and how great he feels now and all the acting things that he was doing and hosting and everything that he was working on. And then all of a sudden we hear this singing in the hallway, yelling and fighting. And at first I thought it was somebody's radio on. And then we said, let's take a break. And then Jake went out there to see, and there are these people having this terrible fight in the hallway. And they're screaming and yelling, and we didn't know what to do. And they looked sort of violent and scary. So the whole time I'm sitting there with Lance, oh my God, you know, one of my biggest guests, Grammy nominated or Grammy winning, I don't even know, singer from one of the biggest boy bands in the country that was lucky enough to get on my show. And embarrassed to all high heaven, which I was almost every single time that I'd have a guest on, something crazy would happen, but this was the worst. And he was so sweet about it and so wonderful. And then we started incorporating this person screaming into the show. You know, people who know my stand-up, that's a big, you know, part of what I do is to incorporate real life and to be in the moment. And it turned out being one of my favorite shows. Do you remember anything else that happened that I missed?
Well, I mean, that's the one that I always heard about. I wasn't around for the tapings. Jake was always working those times while I had another job. But let me think, boy. I mean, I guess a couple other broad questions I would have. What would you say the most surprising thing you learned, if you can remember, like that somebody revealed to you?
I think that a lot of the things that I really learned a lot was working with Jake. He was really great at going back and forth and sort of being the guy behind the scenes, you know, and sort of the Robin of my Howard Stern-esque, the gay Howard Stern-esque show of sorts, mixed with a little James Lipton from Actors Studio. And he was sort of my Robin. And I was really, that always surprised me that because I didn't know anything about Jake. And he turned out to be a really great co-host. And he was very, very on top of things. And he always, he knew things when I would forget something, he'd always sort of zip it in there and help me out. And that was always, that surprised me because I didn't know that about him at all. Okay. And I'd only known from being a guest on his show that he was a good host himself. But I didn't know he was, you know, he really understood what it was like to be a co-host and be of support of somebody else. And that was really great. Okay. And the things that I found out on the show with people I had, I think when I had Frances Fisher on, you know, learning about what it was like to be that famous when she had done Titanic, as most known, she played the mother of Kate Winslet. That was really interesting to talk about going to that kind of fame, you know, from being just a working actress to being in Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood and playing Lucille Ball in the TV movie about her life. Those were her two biggest things before that. And she really, really gave me the underbelly of what it was like to go from being just a working actor that people sort of knew to somebody who was like a household name. And we've become friends, and we've been friends for years since then. She's quite a political activist, and she's a real supportive gal when it comes to wanting to be of service and helping. She did several of my incarnations of my podcasts. Okay.
One thing, I don't know if you care to comment about either of these angles. Either way, you know, if you don't, that's fine. One thing that we're trying to address with some of the people is that that several people have commented like, wow, they were always surprised either to learn what our politics were, me and Jake, that we were on the right, or that also that people were surprised that a couple of guys that come from that point of view were eager, not just willing, but eager to have people of all voices and lots of liberals, and, you know, and somebody like yourself as a out and proud gay man having a show. Any thoughts about that? Did that ever cross your mind at the time or not?
What year was I on? Do you remember what year it was?
It was 2012 to 13. And so this was around the time Obama, that the gay marriage got approved. So there was big breakthroughs going on then, you know?
We should wait a second. Do you hear that noise?
I don't really hear it, no.
Oh, okay. So what was it like working with two Republicans? Is the question you're asking?
I guess essentially, yeah. If it ever came up or not, I don't know.
First of all, I didn't know at first. No one had told me. I didn't know until years later when Jake had become quite verbal on Facebook about his, I guess, love of Trump. So I really didn't know about that. At the time, Republicans were different people. It was supposedly what I'm to understand from a lot of Republicans is that they seem to think that it's about the money and it's about having too much big government in our lives. But yet at the same time, when someone would get assistance who was a Republican from government, they would just sort of take it and be happy about it and not have any, unemployment, disability, having your trash picked up, having police, having the fire department, all the things that, that the government gives us. But I guess a lot of Republicans don't like regulation. And the only way people like me get a helping hand is most of the time with regulations, with having some sort of process that says that, hey, maybe it's, somebody like me doesn't get the same opportunities as somebody who is not. So that's what I saw the differences in those days. Now it just seems to have gone completely insane, and there's it's a whole different thing. And the idea of somebody being in support of Donald Trump, to me, no matter what he was, whether he was the manager of McDonald's or the president of the country, this is a man who, through his own words, not even through his own communication skills, dug his own grave and involved himself with, I don't know how many people that were indicted, and a lot of nefarious people that were somewhat, how can I say, doing a lot of illegal things. And a lot of them went to jail for it. So I'd never seen that happen in our country. And the idea that Jake would want to, or even you, Carl, would want to be associated with someone like that always surprised me. And also to be in a party that involves Ku Klux Klan, white nationalists, all these kind of people that have caused violence to both gay and Jewish people, of which I am, and to my Black and brown and Asian brothers and sisters. So just not something I would want to be involved in. It was sort of shocking because I saw you, Jake and you as such supportive, kind guys. So I guess there's still a learning curve on my part to understand why good guys like you would want to be involved with someone like that.
Well, I mentioned to you, I'm just saying this quickly for the record, but I mentioned to you when we talked before that I came to really regret things January 6th onward. So, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. And
you mean 4 or 5 years you spent standing behind.
I know. We talked about this. Yeah. I mean,
and I just think the idea of standing behind somebody like that after 4 or 5 years, I think one needs to check themselves and say, what am I about? If this is, when Virginia happened, when these guys, who were white supremacists took their car as if they were in the Fast and Furious and sped into other cars, right? And did that. And the president said they're good people on both ends. There's no such thing as a good Ku Klux Klan member.
Yeah.
There just isn't.
Yeah. And any thoughts about, I guess, one other thing is, not in relation to us, just in general. I don't know how prevalent like a lot of people say that podcasting, when we got involved, when we started, was 2008, and that definitely was like the dawn of the whole giant craze for podcasting back then. But by 2012, was it common or uncommon and I'm not looking for praise for us, I'm just asking in general, was there was it still unusual for a gay voice to be heard in podcasting, or was it already common by then? Just wondering if you have any thoughts about whether you were a groundbreaker in some ways with this.
I don't know if I was a groundbreaker, honestly. I don't know, but I know that we were fairly new and you guys were on the cutting edge. It was before everybody was doing it. I think Mark Maron had started doing his, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think that's probably was the impetus for you guys to start. Mark had started a whole group of people doing podcasts out of their basements or out of an office or out of their homes. And I think you guys were on the cutting edge in 2012 by doing that. In terms of me being, God, I don't know if I was one of the first openly gay people. I had, before you, I had my own video podcast of sorts on Logo Online on the After Elton section. And then before that, I had hosted a show for the National Lampoon's Comedy Radio called, oh God, what was it called? Sex.com, We Do It on the Air. And I hosted a love, sex, and relation show with an ex-porn star. And I did that for 6 months. And that sort of started me in doing that. And that was on National Lampoon's Comedy Radio. And I don't know if that was a podcast or a hybrid. A lot of things were hybrids of sorts. But what I found in the beginning is not that many people were listening to your show. And most of them would hear the show again on Facebook. And now, of course, everything is hybrid and everything is blended together.
All right, well, thanks. I'm gonna hit pause. So you also did the pajama party. I forget, did you do it the live version at the Gaylord Apartments, or are you talking about on the podcast?
Oh, I did it on the podcast.
Okay.
And I remember doing your show, the pajama party. And I remember you actually falling asleep during the show.
Yeah.
And you had this sleep apnea problem, am I correct?
Yes.
And you
it was it was so bad I was practically narcoleptic.
Yes.
Yeah, it was bad.
So we were doing the show, and I was, as me and Jake were basically hosting your show as you slept in the corner.
I'm on the phone. 1 second, please. Back that up again. I apologize. Go ahead, and you were saying you and Jake were stuck hosting.
I had done your show, The Pajama Party, several times. And a lot of times, once I showed up, you weren't even there. And I did the show with Jake. And I was like pissed. Why is he inviting me to come to this show at 12 o'clock at night when you're not even there? And then I did the show once, and you were there and you fell asleep. You basically had narcolepsy, which I did not know. And I thought you were just exhausted because you had been taking the bus everywhere. And Jake never mentioned it. We did the show. We basically hosted a show ourselves. So a lot of crazy things like that would happen at, Radio Titans. It was jam-packed and fun-filled. What can I say?
Thank you. Awesome. Okay.